Hey everyone, and welcome back to Cocktails and Classics
Sup?
Season 2!
Whoop whoop! Season 2!
There's no difference between
Electric
the last season and this
Boogaloo.
one. Just time.
There's not,
Oh, this
but
season's
there is a
getting lit.
difference in the cast for this episode. I'm Dylan, your host, and with me are Cameron, Ben, and Zach.
Hi.
We are without Carlos today, and so I guess I'll take over our drink for today
You wish.
for this movie, Citizen Kane. So this week we're drinking what we assume they would be drinking in the movie when our reporter goes to talk to Susan.
Well, they mention it specifically.
Well, they do mention a highball, but they don't mention the liquor. But
Oh,
I believe at this time in the 40s, whiskey is the liquor of choice in America. So a whiskey highball, 2 ounces of whiskey, and fill to the brim. Or
I think
your
whiskey
liking.
used to be the poor man's whiskey or poor man's liquor back in the day.
Yeah, but it took a shift around that time because rum was harder to get during like World War. Like rum was like the alcohol up until like the beginning of the 19th century, I think, and Prohibition, and then they switched to whiskey.
Yeah.
Get that American made, some grain alcohol, corn, I guess, is bourbon, right?
Sure.
I believe bourbon is the one that it's like got to be
Citation needed
70%
on that
corn.
one.
Yeah.
I don't
Bourbon's
know.
the corny
Inform
one.
us. We haven't done the
Citation
bourbon
needed.
tour yet. That's season 3, bourbon tour.
Oh, don't even
On the
joke.
road.
I think that would be hype as fuck.
Well, I'll get in a Subaru and record the podcast from there on the road.
We'll just go to like
yeah.
every
A
every big
Subaru.
one.
We got to get Subaru to sponsor this episode. The series
Just don't
of
mention
episodes.
let's
that
team up with,
wizard.
To be clear, we are not drinking and driving. Just driving, then drinking.
One of us will be, though, but the other 3 won't be, or 4 won't be,
Oh.
so it'll be fine.
And then to cover all our bases, we'll just rotate.
My dad does have a van, so we could all just like
Dirty Dylan's
Travel
van
in the van.
whiskey tour?
record in the van.
Oh, shit.
Sleep in the van?
Yes.
Sleep in the van
We'll,
together?
we'll go to, I don't know, Jim Beam. They're in Kentucky, right?
So some
Jim
of the
Beam. Four
part of the
Roses.
problem with like some of those is like Jack Daniels actually is in a dry county, so they don't actually sell Jack Daniels at the distillery.
No, I'm pretty sure the store is like on the, like I think the brew isn't like the distillery like on the county line, and you have to like walk over
Oh,
to the place
Yeah,
where you can
maybe.
actually buy it.
Yeah, my
Okay.
parents went there and they bought, they make you buy a commemorative bottle,
oh,
and it happens to come with a liter of whiskey inside of it.
for you, it's like how they got around like pot legalization. It's like, yeah, buy
Yes.
a brownie,
Buy
and
some
also as a
chocolates.
gift for you buying this brownie that costs $20, here's some
We will-
weed.
We'll put marijuana in it for you. Sick.
You take 2 ounces of your whiskey, scotch, bourbon of your choice. If you want to do the Japanese method, you'll put ice in there, stir it 13.5 times clockwise with just the whiskey.
That half time is really important.
Then you pour in dealer's choice here, soda water or ginger ale. Then put some more ice, stir again. I think it's 3.5 times counterclockwise, and then serve. You could put a lemon wedge in there if you're being a little fancy. I don't mind it. I did ginger ale. I have like a homemade ginger syrup because I'm a bougie ass bitch, and I put some tonic water in there, and I like it. It's a sipper. It's pretty good.
Yeah, so I tried it with just the whiskey and the club soda, which is just basically whiskey that's fizzy, and that was bad. So I I added some
long whiskey.
simple syrup and a little bit of orange bitters to make mine more palatable.
I'm going to disagree with Cameron. I had the whiskey and club soda, and it tastes just like whiskey, but carbonated, and it was awesome.
Right. So we said the same thing but different.
I will say the highball was my grandmother's favorite drink. And
Was
it's
she
kind of
married
nice.
to Charles Kane?
I don't think so.
Third wife.
Oh, This week we watched Citizen Kane from 1941, directed and written, starring Orson Welles. Also, like, I feel bad for him because literally his entire life was just trying to remake this success of this movie. Like, literally everyone's like, this is the greatest movie ever made. And you're like 30.
I think he was actually like
Do this
25.
again. 26,
Makes it
I think,
worse.
or something, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like,
it sucks to
do
make the
this-
greatest thing
do
you'll ever
that.
make at 25. And then you're like, well, shit.
Yeah.
Just ask
Cool,
Ben Affleck
cool.
and Matt Damon with Good Will Hunting.
Yeah.
Hey,
No. Daredevil came
Hey.
way later.
you shut your mouth. Those boys from Boston did great things.
Also, the Bourne trilogy came way later too.
Saving Private Ryan called.
Guys, I was
said it.
just making correlation to them being 26 when they wrote Good Will Hunting, and
Oh, okay, sure,
Right,
sure you did.
so Citizen Kane is a kind of like a quasi biopic of based off of William Randolph Hearst, who was a media tycoon and founder of like Hearst Communications. But it's following the death of publishing tycoon Charles Foster Kane. Reporters scrambled to uncover the meaning of his final words, Rosebud. It has a 100 Metascore. It is the 98th. It is the 98th top-rated movie on IMDb with an 8.3 out of 10. It won one Oscar, Best Writing Original Screenplay, and was nominated for Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Director, Best Cinematography, Black and White, Best Art Direction, Best Sound, Best Film Editing, and Best Music. It is heralded as the greatest movie ever made by many a publication. Cameron, what did you think of Citizen Kane?
I was pretty whelmed. I mean, I don't like.
I
It
like that I
wasn't-
was whelmed.
Yeah, I wasn't like underwhelmed, but I certainly wasn't like, wow, this is the best movie I've ever seen in my entire life. But it was good. I the themes in it were good. I think are almost timeless and even more like they might even apply more today when than when the movie was out in some respect. Like I think, Charlie Kane is this, obviously media conglomerate in one person who essentially tries to tell people what to think and tries to control people. And, we actually have a worse problem where, we have media conglomerates that are like, 1,000 Charlie Kanes all working in unison, in tandem with each other to like do the same thing, but on a larger scale.
All to disparage our Lord and Savior, Donald Trump.
I actually have a fun fact. In researching for this movie, I discovered that this is Donald Trump's favorite film. Which I
Dude,
think is
Why does that not?
There are
kind of
so many
ironic. He's-
ironic things
he
about
might
that
be
man.
living out
It
the
doesn't-
plot of Citizen Kane.
It doesn't surprise me. Like, the only thing that honestly that makes that really sad is the fact that Charles Kane was like, his political career was ruined by cheating on his wife, and Donald Trump's was like buoyed by the fact that he cheated on his
Yeah.
not one, not
Many times,
two,
yeah.
but three wives.
I mean, I know we were talking, briefly about Xanadu. Have you seen Hearst Castle, though? Like,
No.
It's fucking
No.
amazing. Like, where William Randolph Hearst, like, family, the castle they own. It's now, like, a historic, like, landmark in California. I want to say it's his granddaughter who is married to Chris Hardwick, if you remember who that is. From
Oh,
At
okay.
Midnight
Oh, yeah.
and Talking Dead.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Now I get it.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get Chris Hardwick to give us a shout out from the
Ooh, on
ID10T
Nerdist?
podcast.
Is that still a thing? I think he got canceled.
Yeah, I think he left.
No, I think he still owns Nerdist, but he doesn't do the Nerdist podcast anymore. Now it's ID10T.
ID10T, yeah.
The fuck is
Yeah.
that?
Idiot.
Yeah.
It's idiot. You idiot.
But is that like,
He got you.
is that a podcast or is that a person?
It's a podcast.
It's a podcast.
Same format as when he was on Nerdist.
Okay. There's not a huge plot to the film. the themes are mainly life and death, loss of childhood, loss of innocence, because that is essentially the meaning of Rosebud. It's his
Yeah.
childhood
Yeah.
sled for this, and it's symbolic of this childhood that he never had, as he's pulled away from his parents and
Right. I mean, it's
sent
also
to live with
love.
this fucking old geezer.
Yeah. It's also love too, right? Because I mean, that's the thing he always tries to like, get.
Bye.
Yeah, buy, manipulate for anything. Where, like he didn't have his family, and he couldn't keep people with him because he would, cheat on them or whatever. Or make them perform operas very poorly against their will.
Yeah, Citizen
been
Kane
there,
said
right?
it best. It's get love or die trying.
I don't think you said that. Yeah, the rosebud. It seems like it symbolizes, like I said, like love lost essentially, or that he could never get for himself. But I think it's his friend or someone knows that he didn't have any to give. Like he basically wanted to get it from
Leland.
people, but he couldn't get it or give it.
This film is, I feel like it's very divisive. I think people either love it or hate it, and it's definitely, I feel you can't argue the like how influential it is. Like every movie today has some influence from Citizen Kane, and Orson Welles is like his want to have this deep focus. And if you notice in the movie, for instance, the scene where Charles is being taken from his parents, or they're like giving him away, there's the parents talking to Thatcher in the foreground. Then you have the dad. Then in the very back, you have Charles playing with the sled, and it's all in focus and it's all in play in this almost like Kubrick-esque like forced perspective to like carry your eyes back to the back of the frame and watch Charles like be a kid for a second before he becomes a dick at the end. He has good intentions though.
Yeah,
At the
well, he
start, I
starts
feel like.
with good intentions, at
Yeah, he
least.
puts out the Declaration of Principles, and he's basically just trying to get back at Thatcher. Like always calling out his is it a trust?
Yeah, it's a
It's
trust.
like a financial
Yeah.
trust. Like calling out them, and you slowly like see him turn. Round about the time when he's having that party and he gets the guys from the
He buys the Chronicle.
Yeah, the Chronicle.
Pretty much. He buys the staff of the Chronicle.
Yeah.
yeah, because he's like, "Are we gonna go to war with Spain? Are we gonna go with war with Spain?" And you're like, "Excuse me."
Right. Well, that was based on Hearst. He like essentially like caused, a lot of people blame him for the Spanish-American War.
I blame him for it.
Good old yellow.
Like he
journal.
he would essentially publish stuff that would like incite violence and anti-Spanish sentiment, and is blamed for causing it. Well, not blamed, but had a hand in it, I think.
Are there any memorable scenes from the film that you guys recall?
Yeah, I love the scene where Charlie Kane is first moving in. Is it at the Enquirer, where he's like, "Mr. Arthur, is this your office? I'll be moving in." And then his like bed frame's moving in, all of his shit, his rug and stuff. And it's just a barrage of Mr. Arthur, Mr. Arthur, Mr. Arthur, Mr. Arthur, Mr. Arthur.
Excuse me, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me. And every time he tries to get a sentence in, they're just basically like moving him aside.
Yeah. And when he can't figure out which guy is Charlie Kane,
Mr.
he starts,
Kane?
yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Kane? Actually, he always wanted to be a writer. You? No, you?
I also like the scene where the reporter goes to visit. Oh my god, I can't remember the guy's name. Jedediah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna call him Leland because it's easier. And he's constantly like, "The doctor doesn't want me to have any cigars. Do you have any cigars?" like the definition of what you expect, like to see. I feel like it's become like a common like comedy idea is the old person trying to sneak shit into a nursing home that they can't have.
Yeah, he's got a funny line. He says something to the extent of, "I talked to this doctor today, you see. He's got this really funny idea of keeping me alive longer." Then he chuckles it off. Like, oh, that's a perfect old man.
Oh, I also like when he says there was this big thing about nurses were attractive. When I was younger, that nurses were attractive. It's about as true now as it was then. He's just basically just insulting them. He's just like, I don't give a shit anymore. Oh, fucking awesome.
Yeah, I think the memorable scenes for me are where Charlie doesn't get his way, where basically he, despite having all the money in the world, he essentially, there's like, essentially like 2 points in the movie where he doesn't get his way. It's essentially when both of his wives leave him. Essentially, like the first part where he looks like he's going to be elected governor, and then the news of his scandal breaks because he refuses to basically concede. And then the one at the very end where he freaks out when his second wife leaves him. And then he essentially just becomes like, a lonely hermit after that. And so those ones are the most interesting, I think, to me. Mainly because it just kind of shows you the person he is. Like, he's someone who always gets what he wants, because he has the resources to acquire it. He surrounds himself with people who essentially just give him what he wants. And then when he doesn't get what he wants, or when things, like when he has to make a decision that wouldn't benefit him personally, he chooses not to do so. Like when he's like, when he can essentially save his family and that woman embarrassment, he chooses not to. And as a result, his wife leaves him and stuff like that. And then at the end, where obviously, like he could have not forced her into an opera career, but he did. And then he essentially just like trapped her, his wife, in this like, life that she didn't want until she decided that it was enough.
Yeah. And then trapped her in a mansion.
Right.
And could never leave. Yeah.
And then when she leaves, he like destroys her room.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting, it's an interesting scene. The first time when, her last name is Norton, his first wife. But like when she gets called and Charles follows her to the singer's, Susan's place, and basically he has the option to like concede, and you kind of get the glimpse back to old Charles, where or young Charles, I guess, not old Charles, but he's younger, but like,
yeah,
it is
I get
the past.
what you mean, yeah.
But when he kind of like stands by his morals of, I have to take down this corrupt politician, even though I am not morally okay because I'm a cheater and I was seeing the singer, but like I must stand by this and basically downfall with my morals, because as soon as the news breaks, he just loses.
See, I don't see this as much of a moral thing either. Like, perhaps he is correct that the current mayor is kind of a crook and that he wants to throw him in jail. But at the same time, he's also not, I don't think he's in it for that. I think he's in it to try and get the admiration of the people. And so I don't know if it's actually a moral thing. I think it's actually more of a ego thing.
I think he's got this hole in his heart, kind of like Cam said, of he needs to be loved by people. So the entire movie outlines his sort of plot. He wants to be president, he wants to be governor. He's trying to get to a higher office so that more people will have to like him. And I think that's why he buys the newspaper, so everybody has to hear what he says and he can be beloved. Which is kind of funny because on his pursuit to get more and more affection, he actually pushes both of his wives right out the door.
Not only his wives, but he also pushes like his
friends,
everyone.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. like Bernstein, like no matter what he does, Bernstein's like, oh, I love you. He could do no wrong. And then you talk to like Jed Leland, and he's like, yeah, when I first met him, like he was great. And then as shit goes on, and Jed's just like, this dude is not who he used to be. He kind of fights for the admiration of all these other people, but the people whose admiration he had from jump, just like, well, I don't give a shit because basically you're not enough.
Right. Well, it's interesting too because it's really like we say that it seems to be about like love, but on some level it also seems to be about control as well, because they mention it at one point, I think it's Jed or something, where he's talking about people coming together for like labor unions, and he's basically saying that you know, you want to give people these things as gifts, whereas they want them as rights, so they're not really yours to give, basically. Like Citizen Kane only wants to be nice to people as a gift. You know, like he only wants people to have good things because he gave it to them, not because they deserve it or that they earned it or that it's a right of theirs to have. And so I think that just speaks to a level of control again that he kind of wants to exert over people, like just not only in his own life but just broadly.
Yeah, I mean, even on that control aspect, when he goes in and Leland is passed out writing that like horrible review, he goes in, takes the review, writes a shitty review about his wife at the time for some reason, and then fires Leland, and then is like, "Here's $25,000."
Yeah.
And it's like, you.
I think he did that just to like. I feel like Charles Kane's one of those people that always has to be right, no matter what. Like no matter what, like I'm better than you, and I'll do anything to prove it. Like, and I'm always so. I think he saw Leland was writing this bad review, and was like, "Oh, you're gonna write a bad review? Well, you know what? And you can't even finish it to prove to you that I'm willing, like to prove to you that I'm not just going to 100% like change it and make it positive. I'm gonna write your negative review. Only I'm gonna write it more scathing than you would have, just to prove to you that I would do it." Like I feel like he, and then I'm gonna blame you for it anyways, so it doesn't really matter, because if I take credit for it, then people are not gonna like.
Well, my wife's also gonna fucking hate me.
Well,
Just wait 20
It's just
years.
so wild because he like makes her do this. She doesn't want to do it. Like his whole life is trying to prove things to everybody. It's like she doesn't want to be a great opera singer. She didn't want the opera house. She doesn't want this career. And like he basically like it seems like it's implied that like he either forces like pays people to go, or like the press coverage is so good that people just show up anyway even though she's not good. Like it's essentially like, you know, being like dragged around and doing something you know you're not good at, and then having a bunch of people show up, watch you do the thing you know you're not good at, and you know that they know that you're also not good at it.
It's like child sports.
yeah, only
You
you're
just gotta
aware
go
of
see it.
Kids don't know that they suck.
Or
Yeah, that's the thing.
Charles
The kids
Kane is
don't
basically
know.
a dad,
Soccer
and
mom.
he is he's forcing young Billy to go out and play baseball every week, even though he can't hit the ball off the tee.
You're gonna play baseball and you're gonna love it.
Dude,
But Dad, I don't want to play. You go play baseball.
there was a kid. I was out on my deck like a couple months back, and I all of a sudden like I heard like some yelling over on the cul-de-sac over by me, and I was like, what the heck? So I like look over, I'm seeing what's going on, and this dad is like yelling at this kid out of their car because the kid was like afraid of like getting hit by the ball or something, and he was just like berating his kid so loudly that I could hear it. I was like, this is gross. I don't know, like, what are you doing, dude? Like, it's not that serious. These are child sports. Come on, bro.
Toxic masculinity.
Dude, that's total, like,
Yeah.
there's always one person who's like sitting there and like screaming. They're like, "Ref can't call a strike," and it's like, no, your kid just can't. He's not good at the game. They're like,
He basically called, I mean, he didn't use the word, but he basically called his kid a pussy because he was like, yeah.
Sir, these are 4-year-olds. They don't know the rules. Well, it's like the parents that like complain about keeping score. It's like the kids don't. This kid's out in the middle of the field picking dandelions. He doesn't know what is going on, and you're sitting here complaining that your team's not quote unquote winning. Like, calm down.
Jim ran to third base instead of first base. I think there's more issues with this game than who's winning. Is there a memorable quote within the film that stuck out to you guys?
There was one that came like literally as I was watching it, I was like, oh, I have to remember that because that's a great quote. And it was Bernstein, and he says, "Old age, it's the only disease that you don't look forward to being cured of." It was like, oh, damn, that's deep. That cuts deep.
It's a deep cut poetry.
Which is, I mean, for the fact that Orson Welles wrote the movie, didn't he?
Yep.
Yeah.
For a man who's 26 years old to write something like that, that's pretty fucking deep.
Yeah, Leland has another one along that same lines. I can remember anything. That's my curse, young man. It's the greatest curse that's ever been inflicted on the human race. Memory.
Yeah.
For me, it was Charlie Kane himself says, "I always gagged on the silver spoon," which I thought was funny because
Because of the
they
word gag.
they pull him out of like this, yeah, the gag part. That's what got me.
Classic.
There's a
Did I
there's
just
a lot
finish
of
that thought. I feel like he was in the mid thought.
Oh, did
Nothing.
no? You guys, I was gonna use like 200 words, and you guys summed it up in like 4, so that's better. He basically was ripped out of his childhood, which is sort of the catalyst for the entire movie taking place. It's what makes Charlie Kane who he is. And he kind of openly admits, "I always gagged on the silver spoon." Like, what an ironic thing to say early in life, because that's going to be your downfall.
Yeah, I mean, the guy basically just had to get to the age of 25, I think it is.
25.
Oh, when he gets the
When he's
25
gonna
is
get like
25
millions
is
and
when
millions of
he's over.
dollars, he's got to get to
Yeah.
like 25 or something. So it's like, I just imagine having ungodly wealth waiting for you to just age at
The
a certain
sixth
point.
largest fortune in the world
Yeah,
at 25. Yeah, it's unreal.
when they're basically like at the end of the movie, and they're talking about kind of putting together Charles Kane's life as a jigsaw. And they're like, I bet if you found out what Rosebud was, it would have put the whole thing together. And he's like, I don't think so. Mr. Kane was a man who got everything you wanted and lost it. Maybe Rosebud was something he couldn't get or something you lost. Anyway, it wouldn't have explained anything. I don't think any word can explain a man's life. I guess Rosebud is just a piece in a jigsaw, a missing piece. Like, damn.
Yeah, that monologue at the end is great.
I like how they always reference that too, though. They're like, oh man, if you just knew what Rosebud was, it would put the whole
Yeah,
thing together.
it would unlock his entire life. And meanwhile, you kind of see his life story. I think that's kind of the irony of the movie, is that Rosebud really does not help put anything into perspective.
Yeah, and no one ever actually finds out what it is besides the viewer.
Right? Because it's thrown
Yeah.
into the fire. I mean, it kind of
it's
does.
kind of-
I don't think it... I mean, I think it helps, but I think it just kind of... It doesn't unlock much, but I mean, it's essentially just like his childhood as we've described. So it's like,
Yeah.
it does add
It's like
to
the
it.
only
but yeah,
piece
it's
of
not
the
the only
puzzle
thing.
you don't get actually, though.
Yeah.
Is from age 8 to 26 or whatever when he leaves to go to Europe.
Yeah.
It's that
Well-
missing piece is thrown into the fire because no one really knew him besides Thatcher, and Thatcher never describes his childhood
Yeah.
or lack thereof.
Speaking of Rosebud, this is a really obscure reference. In the movie,
Here we go.
he's trying to figure out what Rosebud is, and I think it's the butler who's like, "What's Rosebud worth to you? $1,000?" And in The Sims, there's a cheat code called Rosebud, and it gives you 1,000 simoleons. And I just got that connection today.
Oh my god! What a
There's
shitty
the
reference.
memes, any
It's
memes-
such an
any
obscure
memes that
reference,
come
but it's
apart.
so interesting to me that they chose that.
The listeners are gonna love
It's so
that.
interesting to me that they did that. I don't know why.
It's Sims deep lore.
Sims deep lore.
Guys,
not
I wanna
even the
let
best money cheat
listeners
either.
know. We took season 1 to really get to know you guys. Season 2, we're hitting it hard. We know you guys. We're tuned in. We know the facts
We know
you
you
want,
want deep Sims.
and we're
lore.
giving them to you hard. You want
Our
deep
next
Sims lore,
podcast
that's what
is
we
going to
heard.
be exclusively in Simlish.
Just like the
Is
Swedish
it,
chef.
what?
in
That
the
sounded like the
Muppets.
Swedish. Yes, exactly. Oh my god. Hurga-durga.
Were there any
No,
surprises
is that a no
in
to
the
the
film?
Simlish podcast?
Oh.
No, we're not doing Simlish.
Were there any surprises for anyone?
I think rewatching it, no. I think this movie's hard to be surprised by because it's been around for almost 60 years.
Over
So,
60.
oh no,
80.
shit, 80. Math is hard.
Ben's still
Hold on.
living in 2001.
Wow, you hit your heart.
Wait.
You hit your head pretty hard there. What? Donald
Yeah,
Trump,
guys.
the guy on TV? No. What are
The
you
guy
talking
from
about?
Home Alone 2?
Yeah, almost 80 years going into it. Like every
I love The Apprentice.
You're fired. Ha ha ha.
we talked about it with some of the other like older movies we've done. There's no surprise in this movie. If unless you've been like living under a rock, you probably know what Rosebud is. Within the first few minutes of the movie, you hear him say Rosebud, and you go, "Oh,
yeah,
that's
that
the sled."
I did not know that. I did not
Jesus
know what it was
Christ.
until the end of the movie.
Cameron lives under a rock. Confirmed. Got it.
That's the whole point of this thing we're doing.
But
Might as well call this
I just
podcast
think-
The Rock with Nicolas Cage and Sean Connery.
It's hard to watch movies from so long ago and be like, yeah, I was so shocked by this thing.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I've seen it referenced a million times. I know exactly what it is. I know. So yeah, to sit there and be like, oh, this story's so boring. A 6-year-old could write it. Well, yeah, a 6-year-old could write it probably because that 6-year-old's seen it probably half a dozen times already through other mediums and other instances of pop culture that have referenced it. So, however, I will say parts of this movie they do get super bland and kind of, the 15 minutes you watch of film footage that basically explains his whole life.
And then you have to
Just
watch
for
his
your-
whole life again.
Just to exactly, yes, just to rewatch his whole life again. Yeah, come on. Okay. Jesus Christ.
To that point, I do think you could literally just be like, oh, like popular newspaper man Charles Kane dies, blah blah. Like make that whole segment like 30 seconds,
Oh my god.
and then
It was
we find
so
out
long.
about Charles Kane.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
the next, entire movie's 2 hours. But if we took out the
Well,
first 15 minutes,
I just
it'd be
think
hour 45
I mean,
minutes.
just even like the stuff that happens with his first wife and like the whole him seeing this, the song, the quote unquote singer,
Yeah.
like that would have been such a great surprise to get in the movie as opposed to it being explained to you in the first 10 minutes through a fucking film reel.
Right.
Yeah, but people in the 40s were dumb, so we have to explain everything.
Hashtag evolution, which didn't exist in the 40s.
Shout out boomers. Still ruining
We're
it.
just being born.
Ah, Citizen Kane,
Ah, Citizen Kane, see?
Charles Foster Kane,
Not as good as the
died
Phantom
in
Menace, see?
Avenue. Here, let me explain his entire life in the next 15 minutes. You can watch it over the course of the next 2 hours.
Pay 5 cents. It's a Nickelodeon. Get it?
Anyway.
Like the television channel that you'll see in a few years with a sponge talking on it with a squid and a starfish. See?
And a weird dog and a cat that mysteriously got attached.
Somehow they morphed in the middle. How did they poop? We don't know.
Dog. They poop into each other.
What's up, Allison?
It's like a reverse
It
human
just goes
centipede.
back and forth.
Ben, is that Taco Bell?
It is
No!
Yeah.
Rip. Did you get the
Oh,
wine?
man.
I don't think
No,
they
I
sell it
didn't
at
get
the
the Taco
store.
Bell wine. No, I didn't. Sorry.
They don't give it to you in the drive-thru.
So this week's podcast is brought to you by Surfside Sips. They make high-impact glass straws. They're a family-owned company. And what's better than saving the turds, you know?
The turds.
The turds.
You know, I'm one of those people who hates using paper straws. Paper straws fucking
Paper straws suck.
I
They are
love
the worst
what
solution.
they do. I love that we're minimizing the use of plastic straws. I enjoy that. Paper straws suck ass.
They suck. They're the worst possible solution because turns out, guess what? Paper and water don't fucking mix, okay? I don't know who came up with it, but it doesn't work. Even though they put coating on it to try and help, it doesn't work. It just gets soggy and you end up throwing it away anyway, and that's just more waste. And so,
But you know what doesn't get soggy? Glass.
yeah.
Glass straws from Surfside Sips. And if you want to get some glass straws from Surfside Sips, you can use coupon code cocktails and classics spelled out. That's cocktails AND classics for 20% off your order.
And if you're looking for a business to support during this time, seems like a good idea. Today's episode is brought to you by Audible. Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment and audiobooks, ranging from bestsellers to celebrity memoirs, news, business, and self-development. But essentially what it is every month you get 1 credit to pick any title, plus 2 Audible originals from their monthly selection. So, Dylan and Zach, what are your experiences with Audible?
So, working from home nowadays, I recently used Audible to rip through one of my favorite book series. It's always great to go back and revisit some of your favorites.
And since we've recently done From Russia with Love, you could check out some of Ian Fleming's books on Audible. They have Dan Stevens, Toby Stevens, Damian Lewis, many great narrators. Read through Diamonds Are Forever, From Russia with Love, Live and Let Die. So maybe you want to get into the James Bond novels as well as the movies.
To start your free 30-day trial, go to audibletrial.com/cocktails and classics, all lowercase. Again, that's audible.com/cocktails, AND classics. After your free trial is up, it costs $14.95 per month. However, there are no commitments, and if you can't decide what to listen to, that's okay. You can roll your credits over up to 1 year.
At this point, if you don't know, now you know. It's time for Zach to take over and put us through a trivia quiz. Zach, take it away.
Thank you, Dylan. All right, guys, question number 1. To kick off Season 2, Episode 1 of the Cocktails and Classics podcast with my favorite cocktails. At what age did Orson Welles make the cover of Time magazine for the first time? Is it A, 23, B, 33, or C, 43?
I'm going to say 23 because I'm fairly certain he was actually kind of famous before making this movie, like a little bit. I think he did plays before this.
I'm going to say 23 as well, because I think War of the Worlds put him on the map.
I think that's what it was,
And that is what got him on Time.
I was going to say the exact same thing, 23, for the exact same reason Dylan just gave, War of the Worlds.
Well, you guys may have colluded prior to this. The answer is 23. But you know, that's fine. I don't even care. I have an amazing tiebreaker for you if we need it. And I
Was
really
that
want
the
to get to
reason
it.
why he was on Time, or do you know?
I don't know. I'm just here to ask you the questions.
Okay.
I don't research this shit. I don't even
Hey,
know
you
if
just
the
make
answers
stuff
are right. During the filming,
It's mildly accurate. It's
it's
I have
close. It's
approximate
close.
knowledge of many things.
I mean, he was like somewhere between 20 and 30, I guess. I don't know. Anywho, question number two. During the filming and production of this movie, how many cups of coffee did Wells consume during each day?
Is this the Billy on the Street
Hang on.
question?
Is it A, 10?
Oh no, it goes
You know how
higher.
the questions go around here.
Yeah.
B, 20, or C, 30?
What the fuck?
10 is an insane number.
Coming from somebody who had 3 cups of coffee today, I was fucking jittery. I don't know how you do 10.
Oh my god.
Was coffee just weaker back then? Maybe they didn't make strong coffee. It was just like
They didn't have that Maxwell House
pussy
shit.
coffee.
They didn't
Yeah, if
have that
anything, I feel
Maxwell
like it was
House
probably more
French roast.
potent.
Extra bold.
Oh, God.
They like their bean water spicy.
I like it muddy.
I'll
gritty.
shoot down the middle and say, what, 38? 20. I'll shoot down the middle and say 20.
Yeah, 10, 20, and 30. Those are the options.
Yeah, I'll say 20.
If the grinds don't get caught in between my teeth and my gum, I don't want it.
Ew, gross.
Shit, dude. 10 is insane. That's. Oh, man. I'm gonna say 10 cups of coffee.
It's so
Comes
low, you
down to
weakling.
Ben.
It's so low. 10 cups. How many cups of coffee you drink a day, buddy?
0 to 1.
Do I meme and just go 30? 30 seems like a shit ton. You know what though? I could see him drinking just coffee sun up to sundown. And like the fact that he was the director meant he was there for the entire filming, like no matter what was going on. Fuck it. I'm gonna say 30.
So I did learn a ton about Orson Welles, his diet during the movie. Actually more than I cared to know. He would go stretches, they said, of days where he wouldn't eat at all. And then he would sit down for a meal and order like 3 steaks and a shit ton of sides. And that's just kind of how it went for a while. But to curb his hunger, he would consume roughly 30 cups of coffee a day.
God.
Wow.
I don't
How is that-
understand how that happens. If he's getting, well, if you got 30 cups of coffee, what are you getting? Maybe 4 hours of sleep a night?
I mean, again, figure if he's there first thing in the morning and he's leaving late at night and he's just drinking coffee and like railing coffee. I mean, who knows? Maybe his body just adjusted to it and
Yeah.
he was sleeping like a goddamn baby. I know people, I think Forrest drinks coffee like, he'll finish coffee like 20 minutes before he goes to sleep, which I mean, mind you, is like
I was
4
going to
o'clock in
say,
the
does he
morning
drink
for him,
coffee at
but-
2 a.m.?
But I mean, there are people that
I mean,
that
I can do that for the
that
most
can
part.
do that.
Yeah, I could as well, I think.
I can if it's like a Bruce Wayne when there's some maple syrup and some bourbon in there for sure.
Uppers and downers, uppers and downers.
Yeah, combo.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. After 2 questions, we have Ben in the lead with 2 points. Cameron and Dylan each have a point. I really want to do the tiebreaker, so if you guys could just work this for me, that'd be awesome. Question number 3. What year was RKO Pictures founded? Is it A, 1918, B, 1928, or C, 1938?
Well, I guess I'll go first because these guys need to answer different in order to do a tiebreaker. I'm gonna say 1918.
I will say the 1920s number. I feel like this movie came out in 41, so 38 feels way too this movie studio was founded and then they came out with this movie. I don't buy it. I don't know.
I will say to talk about that answer is to sway someone into that answer. That wasn't Citizen Kane Orson Welles' like first directorial movie.
It was his
Yeah.
first movie.
So I mean, that movie for the time probably had a pretty decent budget. You gotta think. Do you think an established studio is going to give someone that kind of budget for their first movie? Do they
I think
this
that would be-
motherfucker is Spike
I don't
Lee?
know. Well, so he did War of the Worlds, and I think, if I remember correctly, I think that he actually got like an exclusivity deal with this studio company for like 4 years or something, which was insane for a person who had never produced a movie before.
Yeah. I'm actually gonna say B, 1928, I believe it was.
Yeah.
I'm also gonna say that answer. I think 1918 is too early, because they were still doing silent pictures, and I think like the first big silent movie came out in like 1920, like The Jazz Pianist, I think is what it was. Dropping some film nerd on you.
No, it's appreciated. I don't know if that is correct, but 1928 is correct,
Nice.
which means you guys really did me a solid because I dug deep for this tiebreaker, and I'm glad I get to use it. And I'm even more glad that my bud Dylan, to open up season 2, has a chance to get a win.
Fuck. I shouldn't
And
have done
Wow,
this.
I was way off here. The Jazz Singer is a 1927 American musical drama.
Wow.
all right, this tiebreaker, I'm very proud of it. It does favor Dylan because it leads right into his specialty. So, typical format, closest without going over. Short and sweet. How many pterodactyls appear in the film?
There are multiple? Like, pterodactyls.
How is that my specialty?
No, so you dig up dinosaurs.
I know
huh?
you were a big pterodactyl guy in college. Performed a lot of pterodactyls in your day.
God damn it.
Oh no! God, I should have known where this
Yeah.
was going.
Dude
fuck.
gets pterodactyl every time we do trivia on the podcast.
Oh no! Oh, I wish this wasn't a podcast so you all could see this.
There are many pterodactyls. It's so weird. I'm going to say 2.
How many pterodactyls did you guys see in the film?
I don't know. None. I saw 0.
I'm gonna say 0. I did not see a single pterodactyl.
Yeah, I
in this
didn't
movie.
either. But since Zach asked the question, I assume there's at least one.
I'm gonna say 4.
Holy shit!
I
If
should
it's
only
4,
go
I'm gonna
3,
blow. I'm gonna freaking lose it.
But I'm gonna say 4. I feel like there's got to be
Maybe
some
there's something
statues
on
and
a,
shit
like in a
that look
painting, or in a
pterodactyl-y.
building, or on a wall.
Exactly.
Or in,
Maybe
Those
'cause, like,
are
he's
those
like
are
an
not
art
included.
collector.
Painted pterodactyls and stuff do not count. If that
Real
helps you at all.
pterodactyls?
How many real pterodactyls did they film?
No.
100.
All right, so the answer is not 4. Cameron did have a point. I said pterodactyls, which gives away that there's at least one, or there's more than one. The answer is 5. 5
What?
pterodactyls
What?
appear in the film.
Where?
Shit.
They're in the
Where?
background. If you look at the beginning, and anytime they do like a wide shot of Xandu, there's birds in the background. They're actually pterodactyls from the set of King Kong that were
my
reused and
God.
filmed.
Okay.
Jesus.
that's a win for your boy.
That's so weird.
That is a win for your
Continues
boy
the
Ben.
streak.
Starting the new season strong. Let's go.
Ben with the 3-2 win. Congrats, Ben.
Woo!
Those of us who have seen it wrote down our ratings based off memory and nostalgia. And now I want to know if your ratings have changed or not. This is season 2, and we're mixing things up, and I want to hear Cameron's review first.
Oh, shit. I was not ready for this. Okay. The theme of my review is just because it came first, does that mean it's the best? I think that there's something to be said about it coming first and it introducing these ideas and it inspiring lots of other movies. I get that. But at the same time, I personally don't believe that just because something came first that other things can't do it better, or that, you know, other things can't build upon it and then, like I said, be considered better than the original. And so I think this movie had some interesting themes. I wasn't as blown away with the cinematography, although it was good. I'm not saying it was bad. I can appreciate it for what it is, but it wasn't like, when I was watching the movie, I wasn't like, wow, this is such a great movie. Similar to how I was with, like, you know, 12 Angry Men or whatever, or Do the Right Thing. I wasn't sitting there like, wow, this is a great movie that I'm experiencing. So I think I'm gonna give this one like a 7 out of 10. I think I recognize that it's an important piece of cinematography. A lot of things have drawn inspiration from it. That said, I don't think that just because this is the first movie to do a lot of things that it should be the best movie. I think that that it has inspired a lot of other movies that have done fantastic things. And a lot of them have done it better because, you know, techniques have evolved, technology's evolved, you know. Art itself is a compounding medium, you know, where people learn from each other and then produce other things that might be better. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's a certain amount of respect that has to go with they were the first one to do it, so they get a ton of credit for that. But I do tend towards the idea that whatever comes after has the potential to be better because it can incorporate whatever the new ideas are and use the old thing as like a base, as just like a jumping off point. So people can take Citizen Kane 20, 30, 40 years later and say, hey, this was really good, but what if I did this one thing that people didn't like and I made it a little bit better? And then in that case, you probably have a better movie. That being said, this movie has a ton of stuff that I love. The storyline, not so much that it's like we're watching Citizen Kane, like his life happen over and over again, but it's the idea that there's this thing that he wants and he has to have it and he just can't get it. And he's almost like got the blinders on. I love that sort of storyline. This movie, like Ghostbusters, there's a spin for you, does have a painted backdrop in it, a couple of them that I love. There's a scene where Charlie Kane is giving a speech, and it's like this auditorium. It's a fun fact that was actually a photograph that he was speaking to, and they just poked little holes in the photograph and moved it back and forth with some lighting to make it look like people were moving. Shit like that is super interesting that I didn't even notice the first time through. I think people, like whoever, who made this movie need to get a ton of credit for doing that sort of stuff. It's definitely a movie that I can watch over and over again and still enjoy. I said it earlier, I think the thing that hurts this movie the most is that it's heralded as the greatest movie of all time, so people watch it more critically. All that being said, I still think it deserves a 9 out of 10. Like, I think if you cut the initial newsreel that's just too long, where we get Citizen Kane, his entire life, if you cut that out or maybe make it shorter and then just let the story play out, I think it's a better movie and maybe it gets to a 10, but I feel comfortable leaving it at a 9.
To piggyback off of Zach's point, I do agree with the maybe fudging with the newsreel a little bit. If you do like a different cut, maybe leave a little bit more up to mystery, but we do get the fine details. Like you get the general overarching, like this was his life, but then we get the fine details when the actual story plays out, how it's currently set. So maybe leaving more up to mystery could add a little bit more, like I guess like thrilling anticipation to it. But I do think this deserves its title as one of the greatest films ever made. Do I think it is the best? I don't think it necessarily sits at the top spot, but for all the inspiration that it has caused, and to be honest, it's a great character piece in my mind. Like seeing the flaws of this man who is supposedly like a great newspaper tycoon, and you see him be a horrible person and cheat. You see him lose all his friends and alienate himself, and honestly never gets redemption. He never like corrects his ways, and I feel like it's nice in that way that it doesn't necessarily have a happy ending, and we never find out actually what Rosebud is like within the plot of the film. And I agree with Zach. I'm actually going to give it a 9 out of 10. Previously, I had it at an 8 out of 10, and upon rewatching it, I bumped it up. I think it is one of the greatest films ever made. It is a grandiose like masterpiece.
Going into this movie, I had watched it for film appreciation. I'd given it like a 6.5 out of 10. Things I didn't really pick up on as much during the initial watches. I did this much. It's interesting that we kind of talk about like the cinematography just kind of not being something like we didn't really notice. I was the exact opposite. I think that's honestly something that I love about the fact that we do this podcast is it's made me appreciate those kind of things so much more now. I will say I do appreciate the plot of the movie. I appreciate it more being the case of like being framed as the guy trying to find the meaning of this thing to try and basically unlock the secret behind this man's life. And in the meantime, you kind of get to see it. Yeah, overall, like I said, the newsreel thing it's rough. I know they give you some of the, kind of the overarching, and they let the character story narrative fill in the details. But I just think leaving it more as something that you get to kind of go on the journey of discovering who he was. But yeah, I do agree that having a protagonist that doesn't really get redeemed in the end is something that's really interesting and something you don't see nowadays. So all that said, I'm going to go ahead and change my rating. Change my rating from a 6.5, and I'm gonna bump it up to an 8.5. I think it deserves its place as being a great movie. I think being labeled the greatest of all time does it a disservice. If you were to show someone this movie and say, this is a movie that, just don't say anything. Just tell them, watch this movie and tell me what you think in the frame that it was made in 1940, versus being like, oh, you have to watch this movie, it's the greatest movie ever made. Really kind of an unfair pressure to put on any movie.
Well, is that a Surfside sip you're sipping over there?
No, just a regular sip.
Oh, well, buy some Surfside sips. Use coupon code Cocktails and Classics at checkout for 20% off.
This is a free ad.
Use our Audible affiliate link. Get you an Audible trial. Check out Anchor. I mean, it's free.
What do you have to lose?
Make
It's
a podcast, whatever, dude. That's what we're doing.
Look, we can make a podcast. Anyone on this planet can make one. Okay.
Yeah, get her done.
Yeet,
is that copyrighted?
or whap?
I don't know.
Whatever the kids are saying.
I heard that's a serious medical condition. So
that's what Ben Shapiro told me.
I
So
heard,
his wife
I heard
said
my
it's a
name
medical
was
condition.
really worried about where you were taking that. And I was like, am I going to have to be the Carlos?
Our edge lord and savior Ben Shapiro told me. Well,
Anyway,
check us out on
bring
Instagram.
us home.
Check us out on Instagram. Send us your drinking movie recommendations at Cocktails and Classics Pod. We want to know what you want to hear. Coming up, we got Halloween movies in October, Christmas movies in Christmas. I mean,
And we
December.
might watch some snuff films.
Some wine and cheese in February.
Definitely snuff films in January for some reason.
It's
wine
my birthday.
And cheese, romantic comedies, February. Did they make St. Patrick's movies in March?
They do,
I don't know.
yeah. Good Will Hunting is one of them.
Leprechaun.
Yeah, exactly. So send us your movie recommendations for those themes or months. If there's one you particularly want, we want to hear it. And as always, watch responsibly.